Go. Hi everybody, welcome to what was going to be our live Facebook, but unfortunately due to some streaming issues, we've recorded it instead, and we've had to post it this way. So apologies for all of those of you that were incredibly excited to ask us and put us on the spot. We will work out our difficulties and we will get back to you. So it's good that we are going to be doing more of this, because I think it's good that we get the opportunity to share with you the simple things that you could be doing to help stay away from us when we open up. But we also have to state that while we are going through this, if you do need to speak to us, we are available. We are here for you. And that's why we're going to be doing this, is another opportunity for you to ask us questions that you might not have had the opportunity to do, and the advice that we can give you to help you keep exercising and keep living the lives that you want to live. So I'm going to kind of facilitate our good, fantastic clinicians that we've got with us, Tom and Laura. So thanks guys for joining us on this and giving up your Thursday evening from the party lifestyles that I know that both of you would be normally doing at this time. You know, especially Laura. So one of the things that I've come across during this time, and Tom, I'm gonna aim this one at you, if that's okay, is we're getting lots of people who have, quite rightly, you know, wanted to keep exercising with gyms shut and things like that, that they've been doing online classes. And I think one of the things that we've found is, whereas normally, because a lot of people are furloughed and unable to, normally in normal circumstances, unable to get to classes, I've been doing an awful lot more, and either with previous niggles and stuff, or I've developed niggles. How would you kind of help those people, or what advice could you give the people that fit into that category?
So I think the main thing is that the fact that we're exercising more is almost always a beneficial thing. It's just making sure that we're not doing too much too soon. So if it's something that you're not accustomed to, we just need to make sure that we give ourselves time to kind of just get used to that level of activity that we're doing. So that might mean varying what you're doing. So maybe having some days where you're doing things that are a little bit more high intensity, involve, you know, jumping around, and then mixing that up with some lower intensity stuff that isn't necessarily all that challenging. That might be one way that we kind of split the load up a little bit. Other little things you can play with it, obviously the frequency. So if you're not accustomed to training every day or exercising every day, we want to make sure that we kind of break the week up and make sure we're not doing really, really challenging sessions every single day of the week. Like I said, exercise is great, but we need time to recover in between, and it's the recovery time that gives you a lot of the benefits from what you're doing in the first place. Another thing we can play around with, which we kind of touched on just a moment ago, but is the intensity of what you're doing. So if it is a new activity, we want to make sure that if it is something that's high intensity, that we're not doing that back-to-back days. We might have days in between where we just dial things down a little bit. So an example of that is if we've maybe started doing a class, an online class, and a lot of people that are David Lloyd members have been using the Blaze classes quite often, quite a lot of jumping around, quite a lot of high intensity, high heart rate stuff. It might be nice if we then the following day intersperse that with something that isn't all that intense. You know, we might do some yoga, some general stretching, just go for a walk. There's something that's just a little bit different, just can help us to spread the load a little bit. I think they'd be my kind of main takeaway tips for just getting used to this new process of doing things from home and doing things online and interacting in different ways, really.
And I think it's really important, that, isn't it? Because I think the fact that, you know, to understand a bit of the science behind that is that the body gets stronger but needs time to adapt, doesn't it? So like you say, doing high intensity exercise is fantastic, and like, you know, I guess our whole philosophy at Summit is to keep moving. So like, I think Tom, what was brilliant about that was the fact that, you know, where I resonate with that is it's not about going, well, do high intensity and nothing. Just, you can still be doing stuff, just don't, it's about intensity modification, isn't it? So it's about, you know, doing a Pilates thing, which is more stabilizer based. And obviously we can recommend Exercise Angels as our obviously preferred supplier online Pilates courses if it's something you're looking to go to. And I think that's a nice balance, and recognizing the fact that if you are overloading your body, then it doesn't mean stop and rest. It just means that to modify the amount of load going through. Is that fair, Tom?
Yeah, I think another thing that we've seen just from seeing what people have been putting out on social media is that if you are someone who's used to going to the gym, you've now got this problem where you've not got the same amount of equipment. And naturally, it's going to kind of limit the number of exercises that you do. And you might find yourself getting into a pattern where you've got a bit of a routine that is convenient. You know, it takes the stress away out of thinking of new stuff, and you're just consistently doing the same thing. Even if, you know, for someone who is accustomed to going to the gym or doing classes, even simple things like kind of separating upper body and lower body, having different days for different things, just allows those, like Andy was saying, those structures to recover in between. So we might have a day where you have a routine where you're doing more kind of lower body and abdominal work, and then we might the following day then do some upper body work, or maybe some cardiovascular, some walking, just something that's a little bit different. Just gives everything else a bit of time to recover. So yeah, I think variety would be another thing that I'd focus on.
I mean that's a great tip, and I think that, like, you know, we're almost forced. Let's put pre-COVID. We've almost been forced not to exercise because of work, haven't we? You know, there's been on lifestyle things, whereas I think at the moment in time for a lot of people, if they've got, let's be honest, if they may have more time on their hands between homeschooling and other joys that we're becoming accustomed to. My maths has never been better, I'll be honest with you. My times tables are absolutely spot on now. It's only taken me 39 years to boss them. Thanks, Isabel, for helping me out with them. But I think the other thing is, but your point's really valid in the sense of, with limited kit, we are going back to doing the things, repetitive stuff that I think we do. And, you know, and I definitely found myself guilty of that, especially for the first 6 weeks. When I was looking at my plan, when I was going back and looking at my training, they were all the same exercises. They were all very similar muscle groups, and they were all very similar things, just to the basis that, you know, I had a certain level of kit and that's all I could do. So I had to be a bit creative. So I think, you know, some fantastic tips there, Tom. And, you know, if anyone has got any questions about that, then please feel free to comment about that on the video, and we will also answer the questions, because we're not live at the moment in time. When we post this, we'll still be able to answer any of your questions and concerns below. So cheers, Tom. Fantastic. Next question, we're going to focus at Laura. So Laura, one of the things that people have also been aware is, like, we're all sat at home in our offices or our dining room tables, and many people are being forced to do this due to the current situation. And the setup, this is the question that always gets asked to me, is, well, how should I set my desk up? What should my work posture be like? So if I could fire that onto you on some tips for people listening to, you know, what would people do to set themselves up so they don't end up getting aches and pains from working?
It's really common at the moment, and we probably still will see a lot of that when we get back, I think, into when we open again. I'll start at the bottom and work my way up. There's quite a few things that I would recommend doing. So first of all, it sounds really obvious, but you want to make sure your feet are on the floor. If you're one for sitting with your legs crossed, tucking your feet under yourself, like this, I do this all the time, but that's really important. You want your feet flat on the floor, and you want ideally your hips at a 90-degree angle. So some people end up having the chairs too low, the chairs are too high, they can't sit at a nice angle, they're slumping. If you can, you want your chair at a 90-degree, your hips at a 90-degree angle. So if you find that your chair's not at the right level for that, you can put a stool under your feet, some books under your feet, some cushions, just to prop your feet up and just to make sure your hips are at the right angle. It might be nice, a lot of people have like a natural curve in the back, like a natural lordosis, lumbar lordosis. What can be nice is, again, to roll up a towel and put that in between your lower back and your chair, just to protect your lower back, and then go up into the thoracic, make sure that's all nicely sat up. Exactly, Andy, sat up straight, not slumping forward. Yeah, string pulling you upright, make sure you sat upright. And so that's a nice one to do as well. When we're looking at the computer for a prolonged period of time, it's really easy to go into this slumped position, poking chin, rounding forward with the shoulders. You want to make sure that your desktop or your laptop screen is at the right angle. so you're not slumping forward. So if you can, prop it up if your desktop or laptop isn't at the right angle, so you want it at eye angle, prop it up. You don't want to be slumping forward, you don't want to be looking down too long, and also you don't want your screen or monitors that high that you're going into neck extension, you're arching your neck back, because that's going to strain it as well. So again, if you've not got anything to prop your desktop up with, just use a couple of books, use something that you've got in the home anyway, just to prop your desktop up at eye line. Ideally, if you can, use your keyboard and mouse separately. That's good, because a lot of the time if you're on your laptop, you've got your mouse, your little pad here, that can increase some rotation of the shoulders, again, put a lot of force on the shoulders coming forward and bring you in that rounded shoulders position. So if you can, use your keyboard and your mouse separately, ideally. And sometimes you can buy little pads, you know, the little ergonomic pads for your wrists. A lot of people can get RSIs if they're sat typing for a long time. Use the pads, use what you can, and just be very, very mindful of your position and your posture. And really, where you can, take micro breaks. So move little and often, don't sit there for too long, be really aware of your posture, and just move when you can. We've got the ability now that we're working from home, we can get up, get a brew, move about, just keep moving rather than being sat prolonged, hunched over like that.
But I think there's some nice points in there, and I think also this is an opportunity where I guess we're more conscious of where we're working surroundings, and for those people that all work at home quite a bit already, I think there's, you know, this is the good time that we can look at our habits of what we do, you know, and I think we're all guilty, aren't we? You know, the conversations I've had over the years of people, you know, pre this, that sit on the sofa on the laptop and wonder why they get headaches and neck pain when they're sat in a massive flex position, or what I call like a C, like a capital C position, where they're all flexed over the laptop, and then wonder why they're getting. But it's not the fact of being in that position, because, you know, what we're aware of and what we have to comment is the body is very robust. It can cope with being in mad positions. You only need to watch Americans Got Talent or Britain's Got Talent to be aware what the body positions can get into when you see people fitting into a suitcase and stuff. The big issue is when you stay in that position for long periods of time, repetitively, day after day after day after day after day.
Yeah, so you're just over, aren't you? You're just
again, but it goes back to what Tom was saying about overloading before. You know, overload from exercise. You know, if you're in one position for a long time, you're overloading the tissues in a particular, you know, in a particular way. The same philosophy kind of fits, doesn't it? So I think, you know, it's exactly the same. You know, people might be mindful of going, well, I'm not having 2 heavy training sessions back to back each day, but then they won't think about the fact of, I've been sat in a massive flex position in, you know, in a really bad position, and then I'm going to go for a run, which is a massive extension position. So again, so I think there's some really nice ideas from there, and taking some breaks is definitely good ideas. Is it fair to say that, look, perfection doesn't exist, in the sense of, you know, and I guess, you know, you're never going to be, there's no perfect alignment, is there?
No, I think what's really useful about all the tips that both of you have been through is just, it gets you thinking. It's an opportunity. So whereas at work, you just go to you sit at your desk, it's the same every day, and you don't really put much thought into it. It might have even been set up before you started under an ergonomic assessment. But just like Laura's tips, it gets you thinking, okay, although we know that moving around is probably your biggest win, your easiest win is just taking them regular breaks. But like Laura said, having these options, we want to set ourselves up in a position that makes it less strenuous for us from the start. So although, like Andy was saying, our bodies can put up with being in a bad position, it's definitely going to get uncomfortable quicker if you put yourself in a really contorted, awkward position, as opposed to if you set your laptop up, like Laura said, where it is at an eye level. You know, it's going to make you think about taking those breaks, and that's probably going to be the big factor for you. But set yourself up to win rather than put yourself in a position where you're going to be uncomfortable from the get-go, really.
And I think that is, you know, and I think that's what I hope as a company we've always been good at when you come and see us, isn't it? Is challenging or common sense advice that is the basic stuff that, and the nice thing is we've got an opportunity to now be sharing that advice to everybody, and you don't have to necessarily have to come and see us. So I think between us, there's some really nice tips. And again, if you've got any comments or questions about this, then please feel free to interact with us and ask, and we'll be still on there to answer them. So Tom, I'm going to come back to you if that's all right. Thanks, Laura, for that. Brilliant. I've got another one for you in a bit. Don't you worry. So one of the things is, Tom, that what I've been aware of, and I'm sure you will be familiar if you've been updating yourself with any kind of social media or media over there, is that a lot of people have stepped up running, returned to running. I think definitely what I've been familiar with is people have been using running. So going on from our conversation, you haven't got as much kit, so variability of training will be to run, and the whole that niggles returns. From what I've looked at, and I'll be honest with you, when I've done a bit of stuff, there's not really much advice on if you are returning to running or starting to run, how to do that. So as our in-house, we call you the running guru in-house. So, so we're going to go with that title. What advice would you give to somebody who is either looking to return to running or starting to run or to step up their running in this time?
I think the key thing is probably establishing actually where you are at the moment. So a bit of a baseline, really. So if you've never done it before, we don't know what your capacity is. We don't know how much running your body can handle, your kind of muscles and joints can handle. And similarly, if you've not done it for a long time, we can't just jump back in where you were 5 years ago. You might be a 10K runner running 4 times a week. That counts for very, very little from a kind of structural perspective when we go back to doing it. So my first tip would probably let's just go out and get something on the board and then see how we respond to it, see what your body's actually telling you. So, and that might mean going out the first time and we run for a mile, and that might be it. You come home, you do all the important recovery things, which I'm sure is something that's going to get brought up before the end of this discussion. But then see how you feel the next day. Do you feel like you've recovered and that you could potentially do something else, or are you feeling a little bit leggy? And I think listening to your body is really, really important. Not getting too wrapped up in, because I know I've seen a lot of people on social media with 5K challenges and run every day challenges, and they're great for getting people going, but we need to listen to our body and work out, do we actually feel like this is the right thing for me on this given day? So I think if we're just starting out, making sure we have that kind of rest day in between runs is a really easy win. Similar to the first question about the kind of general training stuff, the two things we can play with is the frequency and how hard you're pushing yourself. So if we're starting with the frequency, having at least one rest day, maybe even 2 if it's new to you in between runs, is just going to mean that when you do go out running, that you're starting with a blank canvas again and that we're not carrying anything from previous days. Another important thing is making sure that we vary the kind of running that we're doing when we're running more than once a week. So I think one of the common things is, again, we start getting a bit stressed out when all of a sudden we've got to find new ways of exercising, we've got to think of new routines, and every single day we've got to find something different to do. There's something quite nice about just being able to strap your running shoes on and just go and do the same run or the same loop that you've been doing, for the last few weeks at the same pace. And it takes a bit of the stress, the mental kind of stress away of having to think something new. But the problem with that is, again, we're going to overload the same areas. We're not giving the body any different looks. We're not giving it different options. So if we're taking, say, a 2 or 3 times a week pattern for running, let's do one that's a bit longer but slower and not really pushing you too hard. Where you can maybe have a conversation at the same time. It's not stressful. You can enjoy it. Keep another day of the week where we might do something that's a bit more high intensity and we might do some interval work. Just give yourself a different look, I think, would be my next piece of advice, and make sure we're not always running the same distance at the same speed in the same direction.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Laura.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, not only, like, is it fair to say not only are you going to overload, like, not overload that way, but you could end up getting more out of it training that way. So doing a bit of variation with your training, obviously it's going to help in that sense as well, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the performance benefits of having that kind of split are huge. You're much more likely to hit a plateau if we're just doing the same thing all the time, and if you're not giving yourself time to recover, you're going to hit a brick wall. Going back to what Andy said, it doesn't always have to be high intensity. You don't have to come away from it feeling like you've worked really, really hard. You know, we can do longer, slower runs where you actually get some enjoyment out of it. It gives you a bit of headspace, and you can, you know, it's building an endurance base, which is different to when you go out and you just run. You know, you run a fast 5K, for example. It's gonna give you performance benefits from having that variation, and it's also gonna hopefully protect you from picking up some of these kind of overload injuries that we've been speaking about.
And I think there's some mega points there, and you know the kind of key messaging I hear from the two of you is, one, keep it variable. So I think it's, like you say, Tom, is, you know, put different challenges through the body in the sense of, so that you're not doing the same stress in the same way all the time. And I think that's great. And I totally agree with that. And I think that's the thing is, and also I think to them, the plan your week. You know, most people that don't just wing it on the day. I feel like I'll do this today. I think because that's where you probably do get the overload stuff, don't you? Because I'll feel good, I'll go for it today. And then it might only catch you up later on when you get that niggle. So I think, you know, the big thing I took from you there was that actually, if you plan it and go, well, if I'm going to do a long, slow run, then I'm going to do a fast one. I might do some intervals. That might be my walk. Would that be fair to say, that kind of almost give yourself a strategy to do it?
Yeah, completely. And I think that's, again, it takes away some of that mental fatigue of constantly having to wake up, all right, what am I going to do this morning? You've got it planned out. You know what you're trying to achieve on that given day. And then if you wake when you don't feel great, we can just play around with the intensity as such. You don't necessarily need to change the plan. So, you know, let's say you had scheduled a longer, slower run. You wake up, you're not feeling great. You want to listen to your body and give yourself the best chance. We can just take a few miles off that. You know, it doesn't have to. We don't have to completely throw the baby out with the bathwater, but it just allows us to have that variability whilst also having a structure. So yeah, I think that's a really, really important point. And it's a nice little exercise at the start of the week to actually plan out what you're going to do. It's a bit of a carrot, you know, to work towards. And yeah, I think it's a good way of achieving a bit of a goal in this time where everything's all over the place.
But I think, go on, sorry, Laura.
Sorry. No, I was just gonna focus on, isn't it, something to, like, have something to motivate towards and plan it out throughout the week, day by day. And I think that's really nice as well. It's important for people to have that.
I think so. I think so, and it's something that I actively encourage, especially people that are starting off or returning to running, to do, so that they can actually have a visual representation. Because I think sometimes if you look at it and you go, hold on a minute, I've actually got some big sessions in this. You know, you kind of go, it's obvious where the problems are, if that makes sense, especially if you go back on reflection and have a look at your training. I think it's also important that, you know, we're talking about people that are starting running. We're very fortunate to work with some high-end, you know, amateur athletes who are, we would say, very, very good runners. And we give exactly the same advice. You know, I think people starting up to running don't think we're saying this just because you're new to it or returning to it. We've got very, very established high-level athletes that we have to give the same conversations to. You know, we're having the same conversations with that high level, you know, and fundamentally, I would argue that, you know, and this almost makes a perfect link to our next conversation about, we have to think of recovery is also part of training. I think what people forget is, like, you know, we write in our plan, we're going to do our fast 5K. We're going to do our slow, steady 10K. We're going to do our hill intervals. And then what you don't do is, well, where are you going to stick your recovery in?
Yeah.
You know, where are we going to eat? What is the strategy around how we're going to make sure that we can perform well next week? You know, and that's the key factor, isn't it? You know, if we want to become good at something, at any sport, we've got to put our body through and we've got to recover. Which brings me wonderfully into you, Laura, because one of the questions that we get absolutely bombarded with is, you know, we've done our training, we've set our plan, we've done, like Tom says, we've done our high intensity stuff, we've done our variable level of training. So how do we recover to make sure that we get the best out of our training? What tips could you give the guys that are listening to this today, girls and girls?
Yeah, so important, like, to take notice of your recovery. You can do, obviously, your instant things like taking notice of your stretching. So before you go out for a run, you want to do your stretching. You want to include some dynamic stretches, some static stretches, some activation exercises to make sure you're not going out there running, putting your shoes on, going out and putting your body through stress. So you want to include those before the start of your run. Try and, like what Tom was saying, trying to add some variation into your runs. After you're running, again, once you get in, don't just, kick off your shoes, sit on the sofa. Don't just be static. You want to stretch. You want to do a bit of an active recovery. You want to cool down properly. You don't want everything pooling and getting stiff really quickly. So you really want to make sure you're stretching after you're running as well. I'm always having this conversation with a lot of my runners, and foam rolling, getting your foam rolling done, using your massage balls, everything like that. It's not nice to do sometimes. It can be a bit painful, but it's so important, and it really, really can help with your recovery. So foam rolling your main leg muscles, your glutes, your ITB, quads, hamstrings, calves. Just work on a minute of those, each muscle group. So a minute of rolling per muscle group can really help and prevent that like leggy feeling the next day, the stiffness. The other thing that is really important for recovery is making sure you are actually looking after yourself properly. So fueling properly, making sure you're getting the nutrition right, making sure you're getting your hydration right. Everyone wants a treat every now and again, and that's fine, but you don't want to be, coming home, like we were saying, having 3 glasses of wine, dehydrating yourself even more. You want to make sure your hydration is right, your nutrition is right, and as well, your sleep. You really, really want to be getting your sleep in. We know that the body recovers really well when we're sleeping, so a lot of repair and recovery is going on when we're asleep. So make sure, try to get your 7 to 8 hours of sleep per night. It sounds like a simple thing to say, but it's really, really important for recovery.
Well, I think if you look at all the evidence in recovery, I think we had a pause then.
Yeah,
you're back.
It all went off. Sorry, folks. Slight bit of a technical failure. But I also say it's the easiest thing, isn't it? Some of the easiest things that we can be done are overlooked. So things like sleep and nutrition and just those basic stuff most people don't consider as part of training again.
Yeah. And your active recovery the next day, if you don't want to be doing the same thing the next day, do something active the next day as part of your recovery. So something a bit gentler, go for a walk, do some yoga, stretching, do something as part of your recovery, but an active recovery can also be really good as well.
And again, that feeds in, sorry, Tom, it feeds into what you were saying at the start, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's just like Laura's just been saying, having these little routines, and everyone's going to be different. Some things you're not going to particularly enjoy, other things you find work better for you. I think just the fact that you're doing something and you've got that trigger. So if it is that you've got a bit of a routine that you get in the habit of just doing when you finish running, it doesn't have to be, the gold standard evidence-based. It's just got to be something that works for you as an individual, and doing it is going to be much better than not doing it at the end of the day. And like Andy was saying, and the big wins are your sleep and your hydration and what the way you're fueling your body. Making sure you're doing that is going to give you the biggest kind of performance gains. I think from a personal point of view, another thing that you see quite often is it's really tempting to get sucked into looking for the little 1% kind of differences. And I think a lot of the new technology gives you that. You can see so much on your phone. You can get things that will show you your heart rate, and it's it's easy to get sucked into the pattern of looking at all these things when really the performance benefit they're going to give you is going to be quite small as compared to sleeping, which is going to be absolutely huge. So yeah, I think getting in a routine and picking the easy wins really is crucial to your recovery.
Well, look, if you're watching this and you haven't heard my interviews where I did Brian Fogarty and Joe Duckworth, right? One of the big things that came both out of them, both, you know, high level Ironman triathletes. Obviously, Brian won Bolton Ironman, has been a big competitor thing, and Joe took part in one of the maddest 10 Ironmans and 10-day challenges. Okay, most of the stuff they put down is to being consistent. And you know, if you're trying to go mad at the start of anything, don't recover, you're gonna fall down somewhere, either from illness, injury. So you can't be consistent. So I think that point, like Tom was saying, actually, you know, think of it as a long scale thing rather than trying to get a massive, you know, get the easy wins day in, day out, and that will allow you to get consistent training, or actually where performance sits. Happy, yeah. So one of the other things that we've been kind of tying around with and being questioned is, what would be, so if we kind of go around the room virtually, best prevention tip? Who wants to start? What's the best tip how to stay away from physio?
So, do you want me to start?
Go for it, Tom.
So I think my bias personally would be just some kind of strength and conditioning work, and that doesn't necessarily need to be going down into the gym, which obviously at the minute isn't possible for some people. But just doing something that is creating a stress on those muscles that are important and joints that are important in the activity you're doing. So if we go back to running, you know, even if we just have a little routine where we're doing some kind of exercise for your calves, something for your quads, your hamstrings, your glutes, working on those major muscle groups, once or twice a week for me can be the difference between, you know, better performance and also just reducing that chance of injury. And going back to everything we've been saying, actually having that routine might stop you overcooking yourself and going for a run every single day. If you know that you've got to do X number of strength conditioning routines and that's your plan for that day, that goes back to what Andy was saying with the planning. You know, it's really important to have that structure, and it might actually save you when you're not maybe looking at it as closely. It might save you running yourself into the ground. So yeah, that'd be my bias. It'd be some form of strength conditioning training in your week, just to try and give yourself a bit more capacity and stop yourself breaking down.
Yeah.
But just, sorry, I'm just going to say, for those of you who don't do strength work and are a runner or a triathlete, from our own clinical thing that we've done in our clinic, we actually get better performance from doing less running and more strength and conditioning. So if you only do running and you think that that's becoming the best runner you can be is only about running, then I can tell you that we have got better results from our injured athletes, performance-wise, but by reducing the amount of running sessions, like Tom said, and increasing strength and conditioning. So I'm gutted he robbed that one, because I would definitely say that's the best. No, it's good. No, but I think I love where we started with that, because I think you talk about easy wins, Tom. I generally think that's an easy win for a performance gain all day that runners can get.
Yeah.
Sorry, Laura.
No, that's fine. Don't worry. I think off the back of that, I would say, in addition to the strength and conditioning stuff, tying in with that is do your activation work as well. So before going out for a run, before you're doing any kind of exercise, do your activation work. So your clams, your bridges, activate those glute medius, working on your activation work, doing some drills before you go running. So some specific running drills that will incorporate some activation. So, looking at maybe like your hip lifts, your hip hitches against a band, that's going to work on your running drills, but it's also going to activate around the hip and get that all nice and warmed up. So for me, it would be, as well as the S&C, the strength and conditioning stuff, which is really, really important, do the activations, the smaller bits as well. So not the big global muscles, but the smaller stability muscles that we need to activate and make sure they're working properly.
I think that comes across with all exercise, doesn't it? I mean, I'll be totally honest, because I have had more time, funnily enough, to when I'm exercising, when I'm not squashing routines into spaces. I can be a bit more. I've actually made sure that part of my warm up is more activation stuff, and that's been a personal thing that I know that I wasn't very good at. I'm not a runner, so I can't ever turn around and say I was looking for running performance. But part of my whole gym routine would be that. So I think, fantastic. And my last one is going to be, and we've talked about this an awful lot, but I think my best prevention tip is, one, keep things simple. I don't think we have to overcomplicate anything. I think if we plan things really, really well, plan when we're going to eat, if we are going to be training and doing stuff, and plan our recovery strategy, and get some sleep. I think the days of people turning around, and this might be controversial, and feel free to comment on this and critique me if you want to, but gone are the days where it's good to turn around and say, oh, do you know what? I can survive on 3 or 4 hours sleep. I don't think that's the right way to do if you want to perform well in life and exercise and keep fit and healthy. I think the fact that if you need to be aiming for those 7-8 hours every night, if you want to stay injury free, if you want to keep fit and active and stay away from us and perform better.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
Oh yeah, definitely. Agreed.
I think with a lot of the people I know that we see, particularly at Chorley, it's a very active population. So a big part of it is just knowing yourself. And if you know you're one of the kind of people who needs to actually put the brakes on now and again. And another thing is just to not feel guilty doing nothing. It's okay to have rest days and have time where you're just lounging about, just doing nothing, as long as you're not there too long, just going back to the classroom.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think knowing yourself, working out which kind of personality you have. If you're someone who is very, very driven, and one of the people who are a bit more susceptible to running yourself into a wall, just training constantly, I think give yourself a bit of time to relax and don't feel guilty for having downtime. In most cases you've more than done enough to earn it.
Well, I think, Tom, it comes down to that, and I think I love the way we're ending on that point, because I think that sums up so much stuff, isn't it? That actually, that's part of your training. You get your gains in your recovery because that's where the body heals and makes the progress, doesn't it? If your body doesn't have the time or the energy to recuperate, it doesn't get stronger, it just gets weaker. So I think that's a lovely thing to say. So the key is put down your Netflix day or you put in front of the telly day as part of your training program. Well, listen guys, I really appreciate you taking your time out this evening to share some really good stuff, and I'm sure the guys there, we intend to try and get our Facebook Live working if Andy can get his Wi-Fi and his technology sorted. So what we'd like to do, if there's any questions, anything about this, if you do leave them on the post below, I'll promise you one of us will be answering them and getting back to you. If you have any questions for the next one, then please also add them to this or get in touch with us. You can email me directly, andy@summitphysio.co.uk, and I will then put them to the team and we can answer them next time. So thanks for joining us. Appreciate it all. Stay safe, and hopefully we'll see you all face to face very soon.